John Baker, an engineer at the same company as my wife, Jessica, and I were awoken by the familiar sound of the alarm at 6 a.m., signaling the start of another day. Reluctantly, we both got out of bed, greeted by the early morning light. As I sat up and swung my legs over the edge, a groan escaped me, feeling the weight of fatigue. Jessica playfully teased me, questioning my dramatic response. I couldn't help but retort with a smirk, reminiscing about the previous night's adventures. She always knew how to keep things interesting. Today marked the beginning of Jessica's business trip, leaving me to navigate the week ahead on my own. The thought didn't exactly fill me with excitement. While the sound of the shower filled the room, I briefly considered joining her but decided against it. Last night had taken its toll, and I needed a moment to recover. Jessica returned to the bedroom with an energetic aura, in stark contrast to my sluggish demeanor. Urging me to get up and start the day, she reminded me of our responsibilities and bills to pay. Reluctantly, I mumbled my agreement and made my way to the bathroom for some much-needed revitalization. Eventually, we reconvened downstairs for breakfast before going our separate ways. Jessica headed to the airport for her business trip, while I prepared myself for the daily grind of work. Both of us held positions at a medium-sized manufacturing plant in St. Louis. Jessica, being an attorney, specialized in negotiations and often traveled for off-site work, like her current trip to Denver to negotiate a new subcontract with a major aerospace firm. These negotiations occurred multiple times a year, each trip lasting at least a week. At 35 years old, Jessica had graduated with honors from the State University. 12 years ago, her captivating appearance, standing at 5'4" and weighing 125 pounds, adorned with feminine attributes measuring 34, 24, 35, had completely enamored me. I was captivated by her charm and allure. At 37 years old, I stand at 6 feet 1 inch and maintain a weight of 165 pounds through regular workouts. Jessica and I both share a love for golf, often playing with friends as a foursome. Our romantic journey began at a company picnic, where I immediately knew she was the one for me. It was clear that the feeling was mutual as we quickly started dating and got married 6 months later. Now, 7 years into our marriage, we have recently bought our dream home. 3 months ago, we purchased a place where we hope to start our family, as Jessica plans to become a stay-at-home mom once our children are of school age. With both sets of parents living close by, the excitement of starting a family was tangible. Jessica intended to stop taking her birth control pills after returning from her trip, as we eagerly awaited the next chapter of our lives together. After breakfast, I helped Jessica load her travel bag into her car and said goodbye with a kiss. Tears filled her eyes as she settled into the driver's seat. "I hope I won't have to say goodbye like this for much longer, my love. I can't wait for the day when I won't have to travel," she lamented. "I hate these goodbyes just as much as you do, darling. I'll see you on Friday evening and we'll keep it simple with takeout so you can relax," I reassured her. "Sounds good, bye," she replied before driving off. I stood in the driveway, waving until her car disappeared from view, then returned to the house to finish my morning routine before heading to the office. Upon arriving at work, I headed to the engineering department, grabbing a cup of coffee from the break room before settling in at my desk. I had barely sat down when my phone rang. "Baker," I answered. "John, could you come to my office for a moment?" came the voice on the other end. "Sure, Hubert, I'll be right there," I replied, grabbing my coffee and heading to my boss's office. As I entered, he motioned for me to take a seat. "John, I have something that might interest you since Jessica is away this week. I recalled you mentioning it last Friday. Gerald Carter, our field service engineer in California, is currently absent due to illness and is unable to address a problem faced by a customer in San Jose with one of our models. Considering your extensive experience with that specific model, would you be interested in traveling to San Jose to investigate? Currently, there is not much happening here, and you are correct. I am working alone this week. When would you require my presence there?" "Immediately. Let Lucy handle your reservations and tickets, and you can inform the customer that you are on your way and gather more information about the issue. That sounds like a good plan. I will begin working on it right away." Suddenly, a surge of enthusiasm washed over me. "I will head home, pack my belongings, catch a flight this afternoon, and arrive at the customer's location tomorrow morning." "Excellent. Have a safe journey." Hubert replied, indicating the end of our conversation. I quickly stopped by Lucy's desk to brief her on the flights and reservations I needed before proceeding to my own desk to contact the customer and clarify their issue. With that task completed, I eagerly left for home to pack. A smile spread across my face as I drove, a plan taking shape in my mind. If I wrapped things up quickly, I could surprise Jessica with a visit to Denver on my way back. The thought of spending a few unexpected days with her in Denver only heightened my excitement at the airport. While waiting for my flight, I attempted to call Jessica's cell phone, but she did not answer. I left her a voicemail informing her that I would be staying with my parents for a couple of days and to reach me on my cell phone in the evenings. Everything went smoothly. By Tuesday afternoon, I had resolved the customer's issue and had their equipment functioning satisfactorily. Afterwards, I promptly arranged a flight to Denver, scheduled to arrive at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. Checking out of my hotel in San Jose, I made my way to San Francisco Airport, where I enjoyed dinner before my flight. During dinner, Jessica contacted me on my cell phone and we had a brief conversation. She asked about my family and I responded as if I were with them. Jessica mentioned that negotiations were going well, but she expressed her tiredness and planned to have a quiet evening in her hotel room. After exchanging words of love, we said goodbye. Following dinner, I boarded my flight and arrived at Jessica's suite hotel around 9:45 p.m. After confirming my identity, the hotel staff gave me a key card for her suite. Quietly entering her room, I noticed a lamp illuminating the computer table. However, Jessica was not there even though her laptop was closed. Perplexed, I placed my suitcase down and checked the empty bedroom and bathroom. I dismissed my initial confusion, assuming Jessica hadn't returned to her room yet. I debated whether to wait or search the lounge for her. However, my attention was drawn to the slightly ajar door of the adjoining room. Approaching cautiously, the door opened silently. Peering into the living room of the adjacent suite, I found it empty. Intrigued, I entered and was startled by a sudden groan coming from the bedroom. My stomach churned, and I broke into a cold sweat as I tiptoed towards the bedroom door. My breath caught in my throat as I witnessed the scene before me. In the dimly lit room, Jessica stood completely naked, while an unknown man lay on the bed, his face hidden from view. My initial instinct was to burst in and confront Jessica, to unleash my anger on the man lying there. However, rationality prevailed over my surge of emotions, and I slowly retreated from the door, returning to Jessica's suite. I retrieved the digital camera I had brought along to capture souvenirs, recalibrated it for low lighting, and disabled the flash. With a composed demeanor, I approached the door of the other bedroom. Quietly standing, I discreetly captured multiple images of the unfolding scene on the bed, ensuring that neither of them detected my presence. Their complete unawareness of their surroundings, engrossed in their actions, allowed me to document the betrayal before me. Before leaving Jessica's suite, I searched through the open briefcase on the table and found a business card belonging to David Price, the chief negotiator for our company. I kept the card for future reference. Back in her suite, I connected my camera to her laptop using the camera-computer interface cable that I always carried with our laptops. Both devices shared the same photo program, making it easy to transfer a picture from my camera to hers. I set the incriminating image as her desktop background before packing my camera into my travel bag and quietly leaving her suite. Struggling to control my emotions, I held back tears as I headed to the elevator, burdened by the weight of betrayal. After returning the entry card to the front desk, I immediately contacted the airline to inquire about the next available flight back to St. Louis. Luckily, there was a 6:30 a.m. flight that would get me home by 9:30 a.m. I calculated that this would coincide with the time Jessica typically opened her laptop at the negotiating table, marking the moment she realized she had been caught and signaling the end of our marriage. I then went back to the airport and checked into a nearby motel. Despite my restless state, I couldn't bring myself to sleep. Instead, I replayed the distressing scene from Jessica's hotel room in my mind, allowing myself to release my pent-up anguish through tears. By the time I left the motel at 5 a.m., I had cried myself empty, and my determination to swiftly end our marriage was crystal clear. Upon my return to St. Louis, my cell phone started ringing as I got into my car. Glancing at the caller ID, I saw it was Jessica. Choosing to ignore the call, I turned off my phone and headed home. Upon entering the house, the landline started ringing, and a quick glance at the caller ID confirmed it was Jessica calling again. Choosing to let it go to voicemail, I listened quietly as her tearful message filled the room. "John, please call me as soon as possible. I really need to talk to you, honey. It's urgent." Disregarding Jessica's emotional pleas, I made my way upstairs to change my attire before heading out to rent a U-Haul. Upon returning home, I promptly began packing, aiming to leave the house before Jessica's anticipated arrival at 4 p.m. In just a few hours, I successfully moved all my personal belongings to a rented storage unit. Prior to packing, I arranged a meeting with our attorney for that afternoon to initiate divorce proceedings. After unloading my belongings at the storage facility, I proceeded to the attorney's office and requested immediate action to start the divorce process. While I was tempted to cite adultery as the reason, I decided to go with irreconcilable differences, keeping the former as a backup in case of a contentious divorce. Furthermore, I instructed the attorney to update my will, designating my brother as the sole heir. Making a stop at the bank, I transferred half of our savings and checking account balances to new accounts under my name only. I then contacted my financial advisor to take similar actions on our joint investment accounts. With a heavy heart, I drove to my parents' residence, luggage in hand, and entered through the open door. Upon seeing me, my mother expressed surprise, asking where I had been as Jessica had been trying to reach me multiple times. I explained the situation to my retired father as they were shocked to learn about Jessica's unfaithfulness and the impending divorce. Seeking shelter, I inquired if I could stay with them temporarily until I secured a furnished apartment, to which they readily agreed. My prediction was accurate, as around 6 p.m., just as we were about to have dinner, the doorbell rang. My father stood up to respond, and moments later, a visibly distressed Jessica followed behind him. "John, why have you not been answering my calls? I needed to talk to you." "You have moved all your belongings out of the house," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. I calmly replied, "I would think the message I left you on your desktop would have provided all the information you needed." "Oh God, I was so afraid it was you. Can we please go somewhere and talk, sweetheart?" Jessica pleaded. "Jessica, I am no longer your sweetheart, and there is nothing left for us to discuss. I have already initiated divorce proceedings, and anything that needs to be communicated can be handled through our lawyers. What I witnessed in Denver has shattered any feelings I had for you, and I need you to leave so I can finish my dinner," I stated firmly. "Please, John, do not do this without talking to me," she implored desperately. "What could you possibly say to justify your infidelity? It certainly was not an act of violence like the one I witnessed and have evidence of," I retorted, my tone unwavering. "You better call your lover, David, and inform him that I will be dealing with him tomorrow. Perhaps his wife will have a different perspective on the matter than I do." "Oh God, can we not talk? Please, John," Jessica pleaded, her voice trembling. "Please go, Jessica. My dinner is getting cold," I replied firmly. "But I will offer you this. Why will you not take some time to write me a nice long letter explaining how you rationalize breaking your wedding vows? I am sure a lawyer as smart as you can articulate how it was all my fault and how you can still love and respect me very much." With a sob, Jessica turned away, but before she reached the door, she turned back to me. "Please, John, do not end our marriage without talking to me. Goodbye, Jessica," I said, my tone resolute. After she left, still in tears, my parents remained seated, stunned by the exchange. "That was awfully harsh, John," my mother remarked. As I departed from home that Monday morning, a wave of melancholy swept over me at the idea of leaving John behind. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation about the possibility of starting a family together once I returned. We had patiently waited, ensuring that we were financially and professionally ready to embark on this new phase of our lives. Now, everything appeared to be falling into place. The journey to Denver proceeded smoothly. I found myself seated next to David Price, our chief negotiator, with whom I shared a pleasant relationship. We briefly touched on the upcoming negotiations before moving on to more personal matters, such as our families. David was aware of my intention to leave my job once I became pregnant, and he expressed his feelings about missing me once I transitioned into the role of a full-time mother. At 48 years old and married for 2 decades with children in high school, David and I had established a solid negotiating team long before my marriage. Our camaraderie was evident, and we were accustomed to each other's company. Meanwhile, the other two members of our team were engrossed in their own discussions behind us. Upon reaching the hotel in Denver, David and I checked into our adjacent rooms, a convenient arrangement initially made to facilitate late-night meetings on negotiation strategies. However, approximately a decade ago, our relationship took a different direction, and we convinced ourselves that engaging in physical intimacy was simply a way to alleviate stress after a demanding day of negotiations. At that time, we justified it by believing that it wasn't considered infidelity towards his wife if it contributed to our professional success. Occasionally, we even made lighthearted jokes about it. After John and I had been married for a few years, I started feeling uneasy about our intimate encounters with David, and eventually we decided to stop. However, during a particularly tense negotiation, David suggested revisiting our arrangement to relieve tension. Reluctantly, I agreed, and before I knew it, I found myself being drawn back into the affair. The thrill of the forbidden and the risk of getting caught heightened my desire at home, which seemed to benefit John as well, alleviating any guilt I might have felt during this trip. We didn't connect on the first night as I was tired after dinner. However, after a demanding day of negotiations, I agreed to meet with David the following evening. I'm unsure of how or when John discovered the truth or how he obtained the incriminating picture, but the next morning when I opened my laptop, I was shocked into immobility by what was displayed on the screen. David, sitting beside me, reacted quickly, closing the lid and requesting a short break from the negotiations. We went out into the hallway where his anger was evident. "What's that mess on your desktop?" he asked. "I have no idea, David. It wasn't there the last time I used it," I replied, still taken aback. "Let me see." I reopened the laptop, and we examined the image together. "Oh no, that's you," he exclaimed. "Me? How is that possible?" I asked. "I'm not sure, but it's definitely you. And that figure beneath you is probably me, although my face isn't visible. Did you leave your laptop unattended at any point yesterday?" "No. It was with me throughout the trip and in my suite while I was visiting yours." I was perspiring profusely. If John was the one responsible for the image on my laptop, it appeared to be a clear indication that our marriage was coming to an end. I needed to go back to the hotel and gather more details. The receptionist hailed a taxi for me, and in a quarter of an hour I was back at the hotel. I went straight to the front desk to inquire if anyone had entered my room. After examining the computer records, the clerk informed me that a Mr. John Baker had been given a key card at 9:45 the previous night, which was returned 30 minutes later. It was at that moment that the harsh reality hit me. My marriage was likely over. The man I loved more than anything had disappeared. However, I made up my mind to fight to get him back. Upon reaching my room, I immediately tried calling John on his cell phone and at his workplace. His cell phone was turned off, but I left an urgent voicemail emphasizing the need for him to contact me as soon as possible. His secretary disclosed that he was on a business trip in California and was expected to return the following day. So he had gone to California and maybe planned to surprise me on his way back. It appeared that we were both in for a surprise. When I contacted his parents, they mentioned that they hadn't seen him for a few days. I urged them to have him call me once they got in touch with him. Calling our home didn't yield any response. I left a message there as well, hoping he would contact me soon. I sat alone in the suite, tears streaming down my face with no way to reach him except by going back home. I quickly made reservations for the next flight to St. Louis after grabbing the phone. After packing my things, I called David on my cell and informed him of the latest developments. There was a solemn pause before he spoke. "Jessica, I fear we may be facing divorce, or something even worse." "Worse than divorce? What could that be?" "Our company strictly prohibits relationships between employees at the managerial level. If this gets out, we could both face termination. It wouldn't be good for our careers." Oh my goodness, I should have realized, but losing John feels like the end of the world to me. "Losing my family would be devastating too, but your priority now is to return to St. Louis and try to talk to John. See if you can fix the situation. I've already booked a flight leaving at noon. I should be back in St. Louis by 4:30. I need to find him and have a conversation. I'll keep you updated on how it goes. I'll have to stay here until the negotiations are over. I'll be waiting eagerly for your update." After saying our goodbyes, I hurried up. I gathered my bag and laptop, rushed down to the lobby, checked out, and used the hotel's limo service to get to the airport. Throughout the journey back to Street Louis, I prayed fervently, hoping to talk to John. I needed to make it clear that it was just a physical encounter and meant nothing emotionally. I was banking on the hope that he could approach my infidelity rationally and see it as a meaningless act. When I returned home, everything seemed normal at first. But when I entered our bedroom, the absence of his clothes and personal items hit me. It was clear he knew and had left me. I had to find him. After multiple unsuccessful attempts to reach him by phone, I made the decision to visit his parents' house in order to determine his whereabouts or gather any information they might have. Coming face to face with him at his parents' place was truly heart-wrenching. His coldness and detachment were almost physically nauseating. He bluntly informed me of his intention to file for divorce without a shred of empathy, making it clear that he had no desire to engage in conversation with me and firmly stating that nothing I could say would change his mind. His suggestion that I write a detailed letter expressing my perspective felt like a final blow before I excused myself and retreated to my car, where I broke down in tears. The future we had envisioned together crumbled right before my eyes. The family we had hoped to build would never come to fruition. We would never experience the joys of growing old together or the happiness of having grandchildren. Amidst my personal anguish, a selfish fear crept in. The fear that by the time I found a new partner, I might be too old to have children. Eventually, I gathered the strength to start the car and drive back to our now empty home, overwhelmed by a deep sense of grief and uncertainty. After a restless night filled with troubling thoughts of Jessica and David together, I woke up early and went downstairs in my parents' house to make some coffee. With a heavy heart, I grabbed my laptop and camera, determined to go through the pictures stored in the camera, my mind focused on identifying David in those images. As I scrolled through the pictures, David's face remained frustratingly unclear. However, my persistence paid off when I noticed a detail on his right arm as it reached towards Jessica's chest. Upon zooming in, I finally found what I was looking for, a tattoo. Upon further enlargement, I saw that it was a heart with the name Janet inscribed within it. Janet was David's wife. Armed with this incriminating evidence, I went back upstairs, took a shower, and got ready for work. Upon my return, my mother was already busy preparing breakfast for work. Without delay, I burned a couple of CDs with the incriminating photos and a blown-up image of David's tattoo. I also printed multiple sets and organized them into a folder. With determination, I made my way to the Human Resources Department to meet with Chad, the manager. We were familiar with each other, having crossed paths in our small company and even played golf together. Placing a set of pictures in front of him, I awaited his response. Chad's expression was a mix of curiosity and amusement as he looked at the photos. I explained that they were of my wife and David Price, taken during a negotiation trip on Tuesday evening in Denver. Chad agreed to take action and involve the legal department. Later, I updated my boss Hubert on the situation with my wife and David Price. He was shocked and concerned, granting me the rest of the week off as vacation time. Before parting ways, he praised me for my work during the trip to California. He conveyed positive feedback from the customer, commending my quick resolution of their issue and the timely restoration of their production line. Furthermore, he suggested the possibility of me taking over the California territory as the current field engineer was retiring due to health reasons. I assured him that I would consider it and provide him with my decision upon my return to work the following week. As I left Hubert's office, his secretary, Lucy, intercepted me. Lucy informed me that my wife had been looking for me and mentioned that she would return later. I made it clear to Lucy that I did not want to see my wife under any circumstances and asked her to convey this message when she returned. Lucy expressed her apologies and stated that she had no knowledge of any issues. I informed her that there was a significant problem. My wife and David Price were having an affair. I anticipated that this news would spread throughout the plant by noon, as Lucy had a tendency to gossip. Upon returning to my desk, I called Janet Price, David's wife. Although we had met at company picnics before, I knew that sharing this information about our spouses could have a profound impact on her. I introduced myself as John Baker and asked how she was doing. Janet mentioned that David had mentioned I might reach out, but she was unaware of the reason. I informed her that we needed to talk as soon as possible. Janet agreed and asked if I could come over immediately. She mentioned having a hair appointment at 1 o'clock this afternoon, but was currently available. I confirmed that I still lived in an unfurnished residence. Janet said she knew where I lived and would be there in 15 minutes. As I arrived at the Price's house, a feeling of apprehension washed over me as I contemplated the difficult conversation ahead. I knew I couldn't let David escape the consequences, leaving Jessica to bear the burden alone. Janet greeted me and invited me inside. She offered me some coffee, mentioning that she had just brewed a fresh pot. I accepted her offer and requested it black. Janet returned shortly with the coffee and settled into a chair across from me. She asked me to explain what all of this was about. I briefly considered breaking the news gently, but ultimately decided to take a direct approach, eager to get it over with. Janet, I have some difficult news to share with you. I caught your husband and my wife together in Denver, and I am in the process of divorcing Jessica and having them both terminated from their jobs. I hate to be the bearer of such news, but it will soon become public knowledge, and I wanted to prepare you. I have photographic evidence to support my claims if you would like to see. I watched her closely, trying to gauge her reaction, but was surprised by her lack of visible emotion. John, I have had my suspicions about David's behavior during his business trips for some time now, although I always hoped they were not true. David has always been a loving husband and father, and I did not want to face the possibility. However, I realized that their affair would eventually come to light. I suppose this is it. I am truly sorry for what you are going through with your marriage,